First things first, unlocking the phone. This is where you'll first find a few differences. Most obviously, Pixel has an in-screen optical fingerprint scanner, whereas iPhone has Face ID, sometimes.
Now, unlocking it is as easy as looking at it and swiping up. And, let's try that again. Ho, ho, ho.
Now, in theory, I would say fingerprint is more practical in most situations. Of course, not when your hands are dirty, but more like when you reach to unlock your phone on your bedside table, and don't angle the phone at your face. Having said this, I have found Face ID to be more reliable than the fingerprint unlock on my Pixel. However, sunny conditions can make it challenging. Some considerations to factor in are that iPhone's Face ID houses sensors above the screen, meaning there is a notch. The Pixel uses an optical scanner, which means light shines on your finger. This means unlocking your phone at night time can be a bit of a blinding experience. On the other hand, Apple uses capacitive touch for Touch ID, as seen on the iPhone SE. This is the best fingerprint sensor I've used on a phone personally. However, as it's below the screen, it does mean that the phone has big bezels. Other brands like Samsung choose to use the ultrasonic fingerprint scanner, which apparently makes for easier unlocking with wet hands, such as when cooking or in the kitchen. Personally, I think the perfect phone would have Face ID in a small bezel and an ultrasonic in-screen fingerprint scanner. Ignoring biometrics altogether, we have pattern unlock on the Pixel and pin unlock on both phones. This is another example of Pixel being less efficient. The reason I say that is because you have to hit enter after typing your pin, unlike on iPhone. This results in a slightly slower, more annoying unlocking experience. Of course, the difference may sound trivial, but things like this make a difference. Also, the backspace is on the left on Pixel, so I find it harder to get to. I should mention that only on the Pixel can you add text to the lock screen without a widget. This is very useful if you have info you need to remember, such as a gym entry code. Another incredibly useful thing on Pixel is the always on display. I have this enabled so I can glance at my phone and quickly see the time and date, or see if someone has finally decided to message me. From what I can see, Pixel have done it perfectly. On Pixel, I can see the Snapchat logo when I have a notification on there, for example. Very basic minimal info at all times. Moving on to general notifications, I found that if I upload a video to Instagram stories or send someone a video on Snapchat and I leave the app, I'll get an upwards arrow at the top of the screen to signify the upload. The progress can be seen on the full-size notification. When it comes to calling, Pixel takes the win with block and report spam options, call screening and waiting times for calling businesses. Moving on to reminders, Google recently rebranded this as tasks, and it was messy and the assistant failed to make reminders for me. Fortunately, however, this issue seems to be solved now. On the plus side, Google forgoes priority levels, which I've always found confusing on iPhone. I couldn't seem to make one level default for all reminders. In fact, if I remember correctly, I actually wouldn't be reminded if the priority level was set to low. I have had some bugs on the Pixel, namely when I close an app quickly and swipe across the app drawer, the wrong app thumbnail or logo appears, so Snapchat becomes Spotify, or vice versa. The issue hasn't been solved for me, but it is easily avoided and can be fixed by swiping up for home when it does happen. Another far more annoying issue I seemed to have was back in early August when I would type but some characters wouldn't show up, despite the presses being registered. Anyway, this has gone away thankfully, and I'm pleased to say I'm happy using my Pixel again. The next topic is design. Now a lot of this comes to preference, for example whether you like flat or round edges, or a glossy or matte finish. Personally, I went from an iPhone XS to a 13 Pro Max after idolising the flat edges of the old designs. iPhone 4, iPhone 5, that kind of stuff. Eventually coming to regret that. although I still love it in some ways. After all, it doesn't hurt to be able to stand your phone up if you're taking a group photo or something. Flat edges can be beneficial there. One thing I don't like about current iPhones are the camera bumps. Sure, Pixel sort of has one too, but it doesn't rock from side to side if you have it on a desk. The width of certain iPhones, like the 11, seems excessive and awkward after using the Pixel 6a too. It's also nice having a plastic back on the Pixel and not a glass one like on iPhone. It gives the same look and feel without the obvious vulnerability. Yes, I have just heard Apple's news about the Lightning port. You can't swipe for the camera on the lock screen on Pixel. iPhone doesn't have the individual setting options to change the screenshot and camera sounds. You have to mute the ringtone. Now, since you may be watching this before choosing a new phone, I recommend doing a bit of research. Check the minimum and maximum brightness levels on any phone before you end up struggling to read texts in the sun or blinding yourself reading at night. Another point here is refresh rate. Without going into much detail, I'm going to touch on the cameras. Both Pixels and iPhones take excellent photos, including portrait shots. In fact, the 6A won a blind test thanks to image processing software, more so than specs. iPhones recently have featured cinematic mode, which is pretty cool, while Pixel has a great night mode for what's basically long exposure shots. As for editing photos, Pixel has the magic eraser tool, which is potentially very useful, but I don't tend to use it. On the other hand, iPhone has the dog selector. That one I did actually use quite a bit. Editing in general puts iPhone far ahead. You actually got the ability to mirror flip an image without a third-party app, thanks Google. And then there's iMovie. What slightly bothers me on the Pixel is that if you edit and save a photo, it will save as a copy with no option not to. On the bright side, it's not as easy to select several more photos by accident, as you need to hold down and drag when selecting, and not just simply swipe across like on iPhone. That being said, if you tap the bin icon and then change your mind because there's one photo you selected you didn't want to delete, perhaps, and then you tap away from the bin icon, boom, everything's unselected. The flip camera button is on the left on the Pixel rather than the right, which is rather annoying being right-handed. Apps are generally experienced better on iPhone. Of course, developers have fewer devices to optimize for on iOS, so it makes sense. Now, if you use a smartphone, you probably screenshot sometimes. Now, this is one of the areas where Pixel is almost completely outshined. Firstly, because if you screenshot twice in a row, the preview from the first will actually be captured and visible in the second. This is just embarrassing and can ruin many screenshots. Secondly, Apple allows zooming in on screenshot previews. Finally, because iPhones have their volume buttons opposite the lock button, it's a lot easier to use them to screenshot with one hand. Having said that, moving to a phone with the volume rocker on the right does work well with my right thumb. Worth the screenshot problem? Probably not. Both phones allow back tap, so you can screenshot by double tapping on the back, which is what I tend to use on Pixel. One benefit Pixel does have over iPhone when it comes to screenshotting specifically is the on-screen screenshot button. You can access this when in the app drawer. If your phone is on the table or in a holder, this is a very convenient feature. It's next to the select feature. Also, they will let you copy text from any open app. You can tap wherever you want along the volume bar or brightness bar to adjust on Pixel, but not on iPhone. Personally, I think this is beneficial with brightness if it's morning and you're trying to quickly make your phone visible after dimming it, for example. On the flip side, accidentally changing the volume by tapping along the bar could be quite annoying. Like other Androids, Pixel has separate volumes for different things, which you can easily adjust. Great, but while there is a volume bar under this phone or wherever the audio source is, there isn't an always there volume bar in Control Center. The music player doesn't even show the second count until you hold on the wiggly line. At least Wi-Fi and Bluetooth can be turned off without going into settings, I suppose. Also, holding these icons in Control Center will take you to the relevant settings. Intuitive. Apple does offer updates for longer though, and I'm pretty sure you can get all the Google apps you need on iPhone, but not all the Apple apps on Android. That's just something to consider, perhaps. You also don't have MagSafe, AirPrint, iMessages, or FaceTime on Android. AirDrop too, although there is something called local sharing I've never used, mainly because any people I'd use it with happen to have iPhones. You can clear all the open apps on Pixel, which is something you still can't do on iPhone. You can change the colour, appearance and background of the keyboard too, without a third party one. In fact, you can even use different launchers on Android for an extra level of customization, including things like a scrolling app dock or an app folder that doesn't have to be opened to select an app in it. Time for us to talk about something incredible. The rotate button. Anyway, next up is the keyboard. On Pixel, you'll actually see bad words come up in the predictive text bar. A downside is that not all relevant emojis come up when typing on Pixel, so you may have to hit the emoji button and then search there, and it just takes a bit more time and effort. The GIF keyboard, the clipboard. You can keep multiple things copied on Pixel and even pin them to keep them for next year. When copying a message with names, the names are then automatically suggested. Oh, on iPhone, character previews automatically show when you type a password. Nice. On Pixel, there are recent searches on settings, which is very helpful. It's a lot easier searching notes on iPhone for a specific word, and that word will show up highlighted. There's also a higher character limit on iPhone, as I found out when trying to copy my notes over to Pixel and being rejected. On the bright side, I can access Google Notes on any device. If only Google would realise I want to type my title before the note. Battery life. 6A is alright, whereas most iPhones previously haven't been great. Having said that, I'm a bit out of touch. I did have a 13 Pro Max. The 13 Pro Max I had, the battery was insane. It's probably the best word. One of the best phones out there, I reckon. But it's a big boy. Right, there's no battery health status on the Pixel. You can change the percentage at which low battery notifications come up though, which is nice. You can use YouTube Music with Google Maps. Weirdly though, you can't hold on a YouTube thumbnail to add to a playlist on Pixel. You can on iPhone though. Instead, you have to press the three dots and go from there. Okay, fair enough. On a similar topic, because Pixel offers split screen apps, you can do other things while watching or listening to YouTube. Without premium, I mean. I'm pretty sure. It's a lot easier to send feedback to Google than Apple. In fact, you just search send feedback in settings and type your message. No filling out forms. You can customize emoji wallpapers in many different ways, resulting in quick, unique wallpaper designs. While on home screen, you can remove app folder names on Pixel for a cleaner look. Unfortunately, the time required to hold an app to move it on Pixel is too little, and you end up doing it by accident. After searching on home screen, on Pixel though, text isn't left there, which is nice, in my opinion. Next up, assistants. I don't think I've actually planned anything on performance, but honestly, iPhone, Pixel, pretty much both beasts. I might be one of the few people who think Siri provides better responses. Siri actually waits for you to finish holding the button so you won't get cut off. It's also not a physical app in the app drawer, so I kind of find it less annoying. However, on that note, you can type to Google Assistant without first speaking, so it should probably take the win just for that.
Sorry, I can't help you with that.
Also, when I asked for spirit level, a bunch of other interesting tools came up, such as rolling the dice. The spirit level was a bit overcomplicated though, arguably. Safari versus Google. Right, the Google app on Pixel has no tabs, and as much as I like the simplicity, it's a huge problem losing things like when you press define. There are no back and forwards options. I have Opera currently because I like the tab layout. You can swipe across. I wish I could have Safari on Pixel, to be honest. I would take Safari. It's probably the best mobile browser. I'm kind of used to it, but it has swiping between tabs, Has a reasonable tab layout, back and forwards buttons. I recommend setting up links to open in browser when on a Google app. AirPods on Pixel. Yes, this is a topic. So first of all, it's less functional. You can't change the actions of buttons or partake in the miracle that is audio sharing. Honestly, credit to Apple for that. The music also isn't paused when you remove them from your ears, but I have to say I'm actually much happier with the simplicity here, including not having to see that annoying AirPods connected bubble pop up. So with gesture navigation enabled, that I mentioned, you'll find getting around the Pixel is just like iPhone, swiping quickly between the apps. There's also the option for back button, etc., if you want the old school Android layout, I guess. So for me, I swipe from the left to go back. Makes sense. Actually more reliable and intuitive than the swipe down feature often seen on iPhone. It works from the right as well. One of the benefits of Pixel is that you can swipe down for notifications and control center without having to reach the top of the screen. It's also nice having power and settings icons in the control center area. One of the major inconveniences of Pixel, however, is that there isn't a lock screen torch widget. Again, Pixel. Google, come on. This is just ridiculous. Right, so you have to swipe down for control center first, and occasionally it seems you're forced to unlock. I don't know if this is a bug or what. On top of this, there are no varying levels of brightness, so if you're trying to see your bedroom floor to navigate across the room in the dark, prepare for full beam. Interestingly though, the screen stays lit longer when tapped, which does help navigating to the bathroom at night. Right, there's also an extra dim option that does a good job of reducing strain on eyes, but will change how colours look, basically. When you plug in the Pixel, the clock will enlarge, or what I call digital glitter will appear, which helps indicate it's charging. Pretty cool to see. On iPhone, the battery icon becomes green, which you can see to tell it's charging. But Pixel's battery icon just gets a bolt appear, like a lightning bolt through it. It's quite hard to see. I much prefer the Mail app on iPhone to Gmail on Pixel, basically just because it will stay on all inboxes. Apple Pay versus Google Pay. Now there isn't usually a major difference here, but Apple Pay is a bit quicker and easier in my experience. The NFC in the phone seems to be placed differently judging from how I have to hold my Pixel. Also, websites tend to favour Apple Pay, and the integration is nicer. Doesn't look like some weird dark grey square third party banner coming up. And wildly designed alarms. Having said this, it's a lot easier to customize the sound with the app allowing you to select songs, playlists and artists from YouTube Music and Spotify. And possibly more. Sorry. Right, there's a few points left to make. Let's start with Pixel Pros, pardon the pun. There's a feature called Live Transcribe that's basically the digital equivalent of the person in court who writes down everything being said. Useful. Similar stuff is included for language translation as well. Apple offers higher storage options last time I checked. Now over to Apple. There's a hide my email feature for privacy, a shared with you feature to see who it was that sent you that photo or link or whatever. Emergency satellite contact thing, pretty cool. And a bigger network for tracking with iOS devices and AirTags. It's nice to not have a shutter sound for screenshots. Thanks, Apple. Anyway, that pretty much concludes the tour. Let me know which phone you use and which sounds better to you. My summary would be iPhone is more reliable, while Pixel has many features you may need and blows the quote-unquote budget competition out of the water. Go and try one if you never have. Good stuff. That's it from me. Cheerio.